Alright, so today we're going to start our long block build. I'm going to go ahead and go from the short block and go right into the long block, split it up in two videos. It makes it easier. So the first thing, we're going to take the, scroll down here, go ahead and put your sensors in. You got your front crank positioning sensor and your cam positioning sensor on the other side. Go ahead and install those. 8mm socket for the bolts, very simple install. Then you got your water heater probe here. Just go ahead and just clean it off a little bit and stick it in here. Make sure you have the O-ring on it and get that tightened up. And then go ahead and install the new O-rings for the this is the upper oil pan. Make sure you put your new O-ring on here. And just a little hint, there is starting points for putting your O-rings on. So make sure when you put your O-rings on, there's a little start point. So start at the start point, makes it a little bit easier on both sides. So this, you could just use the hole for the start point, and then this locator right here. So put this on. I explained, don't use an 03. If this is not an 03 block, don't use an 03 upper pan on this. So install your 4 bolts on this side and your 5 bolts on this side, and just torque them to 10 foot-pounds. They don't need to be really, really tight. So we're going to go ahead and install that, and then I'll get on the pickup tube and stuff like that. Alright, so upper oil pan's on. I didn't bother putting the lower oil pan on yet. I'm going to go ahead and I flipped it over here. Since this is the rear end of the engine here, we're going to go ahead and install all the lifters and the branch tube. The front lifters, if you order new lifters from Ford, which that's what I do, is I get everything from Ford. They come with they're called lifter guides. So I'll show you what those look like, and we'll get those installed real quick. Alright, so you have your new lifter guide, and then you have your new lifters here. So what I like to do is just oil down these the holes where the lifters go into. It just makes it a little easier for these to slide into this. And then I also like to put some oil on all the lifter rollers here. That way it's well lubed up on those bearings, on the lifter roller bearings there. So I just oil these up nice and easy. And okay. So it doesn't really matter which direction this goes in. You can flip it around. So we're just going to go ahead and slide this in like that. Voila. Just like that. So I'll do all 4 of these. And so this is the front. So I'm going to do the rears, and then we'll install the branch tube. Alright, so we went ahead and got the branch tube installed. Remember, there's a torque screw on the branch tubes that hold down the branch tube with the lifter guides. And then so just torque them down 10 foot-pounds. They don't need to be super tight. And now we're going to go ahead and install the rear engine cover. So the rear engine cover is pretty basic. Same thing, just like the bottom. You got your starting points here for your O-ring, and just basically slap that in there. And then we're going to go ahead and get this installed and bolted on. Now, this also has dowels on it. So it should lock on here pretty fast. Okay. So let the dowels hold it for you, and then we're going to go ahead and get that bolted up. Remember, where your bolts were. You can look at my last video where I took them out. So we'll get those put on here and I'll give you the torque specs for those. Alright, so now we're going to do the rear main seal. I use a specialty tool on this, so it's very simple to do. Make sure that you got this nice and clean. You don't want any debris in here, no oil in here or anything. So use a rag and some solvent and make sure that this is nice and clean and dry. And so what we're going to do is you got your rear main seal, okay, and it's going to go in there just like this. This is a step-up sleeve. It goes inside of the tool. So this one, since I've done this before, it usually just stays pressed into the tool. So I'm not going to be, I won't use this one because I already have one right here. So what you want to do is you want to apply Loctite to the shaft here. I just use blue Loctite, and you don't need very much. Okay. And then for the rubber on the outside, you don't want to use any lubrication besides water or soapy water, like dish soap. Most of the time you don't really need any. I just put a little bit of water on here. Now, what you do is you take the specialty tool. This has a dowel, so you're going to use the dowel pin on this to locate with this. These tools are from Freedom Racing Diesel. So if you want to order these, you can get them directly from them. I believe that this tool is the same for the 6.4. So if you're doing a 6.4 rear main, it's the same. The 6.4 on the front is different. So it's the same tool to install this on the 6.4. Nice if this had Allens in it though. Okay, so once you get this on there, take your seal. Okay. That just presses on there like that. Don't separate the black from the metal, okay? If you do that, you're going to ruin the seal. Okay. This doesn't take much force at all. Should just slide right on in. Okay, and just go till it stops. You don't need any pressure whatsoever. Slide that on. And there you go. So that seals in. Perfect depth. Good to go. So now we'll go ahead and, on these bolts, 18 foot-pounds on the 10 mil socket size, and I think it's like 30 foot-pounds for the bigger ones. So 18, 18, 18, 18, and then 30. It doesn't take much. I usually just do these by hand. I don't even use a torque wrench on these anymore. I just get them nice and snug. And then now we're going to move on to the high pressure oil pump, and I'll start moving my way towards the front of the engine. Okay, so I installed the O-ring right here and the O-ring here. This already had the updated STC fitting on there, so I'm just going to go ahead and reuse that. Not going to touch that at all. Go ahead and line that up. Don't drop anything. You can see the gears to make sure that everything lines up right. Okay, so I got the high pressure pump installed, got a new O-ring on here. There is a kit that you can buy that has just the O-rings for the bottom of this O-ring, and this O-ring. If you're taking out a high pressure oil pump and putting it back in and you already have the updated fitting, you can get just the O-ring kit, or you can buy the whole updated STC fitting and it just comes with everything. So put a new O-ring on this, and before we put this on, you want to put a little bit of RTV on this edge here and this edge here on right here, because it can leak oil out, because this O-ring doesn't come up all the way. So I like to see it seal. Since this O-ring can only go straight across, it can't go into the crack here. So I want to put some RTV here and RTV here, and then we'll put this on and bolt this down. Alright, so put some RTV on here. I put some grease on the inside of this. Just makes it nice for the O-ring so it doesn't pull it down. So just basically press this down. And let that seal up. And then I'll let the bolts suck it down the rest of the way. So just install the bolts, and your high pressure oil pump's done, and we'll move on to the oil cooler. So I wanted to go over diagnosing your high pressure oil pump failures. A lot of people get the high pressure oil pump test fitting that goes into the high pressure oil rail on the passenger side. The problem with that is this valve, you're going to air up backwards. Basically, you're adding air through your rails this way, and then air is going to go in through the standpipes, come down, and then it's going to come up the branch tube into the pump, and then it's going to bleed off a little bit, basically backwards. So you're pushing your oil back to the oil cooler through that hole down there. The problem with that is it doesn't completely 100% seal off the system. So when you're trying to look for an air leak, you're going to have air bleeding off other places when you're trying to diagnose where your leak's at, coming from basically this point out to your injectors. I use this fitting here. So You can buy these all over the place on the internet, Amazon, wherever. What this does is it removes the IPR valve, puts this in place. And if you notice on the side of an IPR valve, there's holes. Okay, so here's your IPR valve, and there's your holes right here on the side. So when air comes back, it's going to come into this and then blow out the sides. And you're not going to get 100% seal, and you're going to have air bleeding still, and you're going to try to figure out where your air is bleeding off, and it gets confusing. If you go with this route, this doesn't have holes in the side. It only allows air to go one direction. So you got your O-ring seal here. It replaces the IPR valve. It feeds the branch tube, the standpipes, high pressure oil rails, and right to the injectors. So that is your high pressure system, and that's what you pretty much only want to pressurize. If you are pressurizing it using that other fitting, you're pressurizing the rest of the engine as well. So you're going to have air bleeding off. It's not going to be a high amount of air. You're putting 100 pounds of air into your system through that fitting over there, but it's going to bleed off like 7 pounds of air going through the rest of your oil system. So you're going to be chasing it, and it makes things more complicated when you're trying to diagnose that. So if you want to make things very simple for you, and you want to for sure find out where your high pressure oil leak's coming from, and you don't want any problems, and this is the correct tool to use. Replaces the IPR valve, and it only pressurizes your high pressure oil rails all the way to your injector cups, or your injector, the nipples on the high pressure oil rail. So you can, that's 100% knowing that if you got air, if you hear air going somewhere, it's in your high pressure oil system, and it's not bleeding it back down to the rest of the engine. So this is just a tip on how to diagnose your high pressure oil system. If you have a crank no start, or your truck just shuts off and it's due to a high pressure oil system, if you're not getting the 500 pounds of pressure to start your truck, this is how I diagnose it, and it's the most accurate and easiest way for me, especially with taking the IPR valve out. Is not that hard to do, especially with the turbo in and stuff like that. If you have the special tools to do it, you can pull it right out, put this in. This doesn't have to be very tight. I can get a socket right on this small portion here, so this is pretty much sealed up, so I can just get this nice and snug. The O-rings help it seal up and be done. So anyways, we're going to move on to doing the oil cooler, and I just wanted to show you how your standpipes look and how they go in here. These are already the updated standpipes with the plastic O-rings on it, so we're going to just reuse those and continue on with the rebuild here. Alright, so this is all cleaned out. Put your new screen in, and the Ford ones fit really good. Aftermarket ones don't fit so well, but I only use Ford Motorcraft oil coolers, so just pop that on there and bolt it down. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and install the front engine cover. I didn't get this bolted down because the customer that gave me the engine didn't supply me with all the bolts, so I'll get that later. The front engine cover, there's two dowels, so make sure you have your dowel here and your dowel down here. Make sure that they're installed. It'll hold up the gasket nice. Now, another thing you want to do before you put this gasket on is you want to put some RTV, one right here, on the bed plate. Seal off the bed plate from the block. So you want to go here, and it's basically right over the O-rings that stick out from the bed plate. So put some RTV on that, and it'll help it seal better. we'll take our gasket and just pop this right in. Okay. Make sure that the back of your front engine cover is nice and clean. And then use the dowels to locate this. Okay. Now that that's located on here, go ahead and take your bolts and install your bolts. Alright, now with the front engine cover on, we're going to go ahead and install the oil pump, front main seal, and pretty much all of that jazz there. So let's get to that. And another thing, all these bolts for the front engine cover, torque them to 18 foot-pounds. Alright, so now we're going to do the front oil pump. So there's really no wrong way to put this in. Basically this just slides in like that, and then this has a keyway on it. So that'll just slide right in. Okay, now here's the oil pump cover that came off of it. You can see how there's a groove right here. So I don't reuse this one. I have another one here that's in better condition. It's a used one, but it's a lot better than that. This one doesn't have any grooves on it. It's just kind of scratched a little bit, but there's no, if you rub your nail on it, there's no grooving or anything, so it's nice and flat. So I just replaced an O-ring on this, and we're going to throw this on. So this, there's a dowel at the bottom here that locates that. So, and there's a dowel here at the top. So you're just going to lock that on. And you'll throw your screws in. We'll tighten that up. Alright, so now I got this bolted on. We'll go ahead, take our oil seal, or front main seal right here. Here's another specialty tool from Freedom Racing Diesel. So we're just going to line up the dowel. And tighten that on. Alright, so get that tightened on. Take your seal. Make sure you're going on correctly. Don't put the groove side on the outside. So that, I'm just going to slide right onto that. So that's a wear ring. It's going to go on like that. And then you got and wherever my nut went. Put a nut on that. Okay. Again, don't need a lot of force on this. have really good tools at these things that stick. Okay. Just like that. And there you go. Front main seal on. Perfect. Ready for a flywheel. Alright, we're going to go ahead and start with the heads. I'm using ARP head studs on this. I recommend them. I don't use the forward bolts at all. Here in my shop, I just use ARPs on everything. A couple things I want to point out. This is an 18 mil block. So with 18 mil block going to a 20 mil head, you're going to need a step dowel. If you buy the factory head gaskets, here's a couple of things I want to go after here. I want to discuss head gaskets on the 6 liter because there's a difference between, everybody says there's a big difference between aftermarket Molly head gaskets versus OEM. In my opinion, I don't see a difference. If you look at the head gaskets thoroughly, you measure the MLS, and you look at the sealing, it's exactly the same to your eyes. I have one set here. This is a Molly head gasket, okay? And I have this set here is a Ford head gasket. There's literally no difference in these two head gaskets, and the metals, everything lines up perfectly. So, you know, in my opinion, I've used these gaskets in the past. I've never had one fail on me. Every head that I've done, I've had customers bring me these gaskets because they don't want to spend, you know, the money on the OEM head gaskets, which is fine. You can get these head gaskets here for, I think they're around $200 a set. When you buy Ford head gaskets, you're paying a little extra because you're getting studs. You're getting 2 sets of step dowels. You're gonna get these step dowels here, and you're gonna get the regular dowels for a 20 mil block to go to a 20 mil head. So you're getting 2 sets of dowels. These dowels are pretty expensive. These step dowels here. I think a set. The last time I bought a set, they were like $25 a piece or something like that. It was just crazy just to see what these things cost. If you can find them online, I'd highly recommend you find them online. Getting them from Ford, they're a little bit pricey. The next thing we're going to look at on this truck, I'm actually going to use the Ford head gasket just because that's what the customer requested, and that's what I was supplied with. On these, you want to, I use ARP. When you buy ARP studs, it comes with a little packet. I have a big bottle of it, so I don't need to use the packet at all. I brush the ARP fastener stuff on the threads for going into the block, and I do it on the top of the threads too. You don't want to do this a lot. Like, you don't want to use a lot of the ARP stuff on the top threads, because if you use too much, since it's a fine thread, it kind of gums up and it gets hard to screw the nut down. So just be very light. You don't need a whole lot. All it's trying to do is, when you torque down the bolt, it just makes it as smooth as possible, like a lubrication. So you don't need to really cake on your lubricant onto the threads. When you put these studs into the block, you don't want to use an impact gun. Even in the directions, it says hand tight only. So literally, once you start putting the nut on, it's gonna pull the thread in. It's gonna pull on the stud anyway. It's not gonna move. So you don't need, I've seen videos on YouTube where people just reef them with impact guns, and you don't need to do that. It's unnecessary. And if you ever had to take this block apart, good luck on getting these studs out. It's going to be a nightmare, and you don't want to strip out these Allens at the top either. So all I do is I just put them in with the Milwaukee electric gun there, and I just do it very, very lightly. As soon as they stop, they're done. I'll let the nuts take care of the rest. So I'm going to go ahead and get these all screwed down, throw a gasket on here, and then we'll put the head on. So I talk about my heads in another video that I sell, but just wanted to go over again. This is here's one of my heads right here that I've built myself. They got stainless steel valves in here. I'm going to show you the difference here. You can see this is a factory Ford OEM valve here. You can see the swirl on there. The quality of it's not that great. On the back side, you can see where it's kind of pitted, and it's just not, in my opinion, I think these are made in Mexico or something, but you can see the difference where they fuse, they basically do like a fusion weld to the tips here. You can see the discoloration here. So that's where how they weld it together. So anyways, this is a Ford valve, and then I have my valves here. So these are stainless steel, nice swirl polish to them. The faces, beautiful face value to it, nice and smooth. And I have these available in a, I got them now in a 45-degree angle. I just got those ordered up. So I'm giving customers a little bit of an option in the performance side of these engines. So if you want to do a 45-degree angle valve, I can do that for you guys, and keep it 1 mil over. If you take a 1 mil over valve, and that's a 37-degree, and put a 45 to it, you're going to take away some of the valve face to it, so you're going to lose that 1 mil. Anyways, these are stainless steel, lifetime warranty, right from SI. So SI standing behind their valves, high quality, and like I said, these heads have them all in there. So this head is a 20 mil head. We're going to put it on an 18 mil block. I'm going to show you some tips and tricks to the from going from an 18 to a 20 mil, using the step dowels that come with the Ford head gaskets. And if you want to know more information about these heads, I have another YouTube video that shows you everything about what I put in them, from basically brand new valves, springs, retainers, locks, everything in these heads is completely new. I don't reuse anything from your heads. I don't ask for a core charge, nothing. So, and please don't send me your heads, because I'm just going to throw them in the garbage. There's some small information on my heads real quick. If you want more information, send me an email, or look at my other YouTube video where I show you the seats and stuff like that. So now we're going to get to, I'm going to put the head on this engine here and show you some tips and tricks to the going from an 18 mil block to a 20 mil head. Alright, on these injectors, I've had, in another video that I did for you guys when I showed you how to do in-cab head gasket, or head install basically with the cab on, I showed you how to pull the O-rings and everything off of this, and how to put the new seal kits on. Here's something that I'm running into lately. I've had customers call me up. I had a shop down the street from me too that did the same thing. They're pulling the injectors out and taking the O-rings off and running them into a bench grinder on a wire wheel on a bench grinder. There's little jets at the tip of this, and if you run a wire wheel on it at a high speed like that, you're going to take those holes and you're just going to cover the metal. It's just going to move right over those holes, and it's just going to cover itself up. You're going to lose about 50% of your fueling out of these nozzles. The best way to clean them, if they got a little soot debris on it, just brake cleaner and a rag. I see in the YouTube videos where the guys are using like sandpaper and all sorts of stuff. Don't even bother with that. You're just going to ruin the nozzle. If you take sandpaper to the tip of this, you're just gonna cover those holes up. If you use brake cleaner and a rag, just clean the tip of the nozzle up. There's enough pressure to come out of here to clean whatever's in those holes, any dirt or soot debris that's left in there. There's enough to blow it out, and if something's that small, it's not going to affect the engine. So, just let the fuel clean up those holes, and don't worry about, running a wire wheel on this to clean up these nozzles. If you do that, and you put your truck back together, and you wonder why your throttle response sucks, and why it takes forever for it to get up and go, and you got no other issues with the truck, that's why. So, you're going to be replacing all your injectors there. So anyways, I got the head gasket on, and then I put the head on. I put the glow plugs in, and I'm also putting the injectors in. So I'm putting all the injectors on, and there's a reason why I'm doing this and not putting the rocker carrier on. I'm going to get to that in a second. Alright, so this is a 20 mil head. It used to have an 18 mil on here. These dowels will no longer locate to this head. So we're going to have to remove these dowel pins and make this completely flat. So we're going to just take some pair of pliers, pull these right out. They should just, notice how they just slide out. So you're just going to remove these and discard them because you're not going to be using them. Install the gasket. Make sure that this thing's nice and clean. I did clean this off as good as I could in a hot tank. So I'm going to show you. Usually on the 18 mil heads, you got bolt holes here and here that you can line up. Some of them, like on the 03s, they go all the way around. So you have these other holes here that are capped off. They didn't bother drilling them out. So on the if you have a 20 mil head and a 20 mil rocker carrier assembly, you have two locating dowels on the bottom here. One will be here and one will be about right here. And then you only have two bolts holding the top to the head. If you look at the head here, there's no holes drilled and tapped out, and it's all there. You only have these two screw holes up here, but we're not going to be using those either, because when you put these on, these holes here and here, they're not going to line up. So this is fine. You can do this way. I've done it many times with customers' trucks. They order the 20 mil heads from me, and usually 05. If it's an 03, you need to use an 18 mil. You can't use an 03 rocker carrier on a 20 mil head. It doesn't work out really good. So you need to use an 18. But on the 04.5, where they have the I usually on 05 and up, I throw 20 mils on them anyway, and I just go with this setup. So I'm going to show you how to get this to work, and you don't have to worry about oil leaking or anything like that. Alright, so O-rings installed, dowel pins removed, and now we're just going to take this, pull the injector harnesses up a little bit so they don't catch here. Don't want to smash these. Okay. And come back. Slide that on just like that. Now this doesn't really move much, but since I have the glow plugs installed, your next thing to do is I'll clean this up. Again, this is something that the customer just threw at me. You should probably put a new harness on here, but as long as it's not broken, I guess it's usable. Usually when I take these trucks apart, if I'm pulling the head off, I'll leave the glow plug harness in, and I'll take the glow plug harness out when I get the rocker carrier off. So make sure you have the right side on, and push that in. Okay, now with the glow plug harness in here, it's located on the glow plugs, so that took all your movement out of your rocker box. Put this up here. So now I don't have to worry about the rocker box moving. So now we can go ahead and put the bridges in, rocker arms, and don't worry about bolting these down, so these can go ahead and clip in now. Makes it pretty easy for these. So we'll do the bridges, and now I'm going to talk to you about the push rods here in a second. Alright, so now we're going to go over push rods. Ford has superseded the 6.0 push rod that they originally had to the 6.4. Now they did this for a couple of different reasons. One, the lifters were riding too hard on the cam. They had lifter failure, and the lifters breaking. Now the lifters that are in the 6 liter are the same for 6.0, 6.4, 7.3, a couple other gas engines that are in the Chrysler and Chevy world, and it's just a very well-known common lifter. It's the same partner for a lot of different vehicles. Now, if those vehicles don't have problems with lifters, then why did the 6 liter? It's because their push rod geometry was off. If your truck is stock and you're not doing anything to your heads, I don't recommend pulling your engine apart just to take your push rods out and swap them out. In this case, these heads have been machined, and here's another reason why Ford did it. Ford's been selling a lot of remanufactured heads. They're taking, I think, 10 thou off of these heads, 10 to 12 thou. I've seen up to 12 sometimes, but what's happening is when they do that, they're not taking anything off of the tip of the valve stem. So when you cut your head, you take 12 thou off. Now I'm going to show you what it does. If your head's here, say you cut 12 thou off and your push rod was here, so all of a sudden your push rod just went up 12 thou. Okay, so you went from being at 0 to 12 thou higher. So now your push rod is up higher, so that's kind of preloading it's either preloading the lifter more, or you're gonna bottom out in the lifter and open up the valves prematurely, or the valves aren't gonna close at all, and it's just gonna be open all the time. So you're gonna drop compression. What I do when I machine my heads is I take I only take a couple thou off, maybe 1 or 2, just to mirror it out on the bottom of the head. But since the heads are brand new, they I don't need to take 10, 12 thou off a head. But I machine the block, so if I have to take a few thou off the block to get it nice and flat when I deck the block, then I need to compensate for something either on the valves or the push rods. Since the lifters are hydraulic and they're not adjustable, push rods is the way to go. So this engine was machined on the block, and it has like 1 or 2 thou taken off on the heads. Plus, these valves are recessed into the head. I put them, my specs, I like to go a little deep on the valve recession. One, I got a bigger valve in there, and 2, I have, sometimes I'm running a 45-degree angle, sometimes I'm running stock angles, but I've seen pistons hit on these, and just Ford specs, first off, is 13 thou to 27 thou. I like to see them at between 20 and 30. So if they're under 20, if they're not at 20 thou recessing the heads, I ain't gonna put these on a truck. So I recess these ones. These are mostly 20 to 25, and then I take the valve stems and I cut those down to what factory height was. So before you take the Ford valve out, I have measured the valve stem height off the back of the head, and I've measured what the stem height is. So from the bottom of the valve stem seal to the top of the valve stem, I've measured that out, so that way I know where I'm supposed to be at, and I've measured every one of them on a stock head. So I've taken that number and I've recessed the valves in, so they're into the head. So doing that, you're gonna, now you're putting more pressure down on your push rod, right? So if I put a bridge across this, okay, if this is my push rod and this is my valve stem, if I recess my valve in, it's gonna go up, and if I take some like 10 thou off the deck of my head, then this is gonna go up. So now I'm doing this with your geometry. You're messing with your geometry of the engine. So an easy fix that Ford found when they found, they've done a lot of remanufactured heads, and The best fix to get rid of to take care of the geometry in the valve train on the engine was to use the 6.4 push rod. The 6.4 push rods are about 50 thou shorter. So you are your lifter's a shock. Think of it as a shock absorber. So when the lobe comes around, it hits the lifter pretty hard, and the lifter is supposed to absorb that punch, but at the same time push the push rod up. So it's like it's got some different characteristics to it, but that's how it's supposed to work. It's not supposed to be lifters here. This is crammed in it and tight as possibly as much as it can get, and riding on the cam all the time. You want some play inside of your lifter and your push rod. That's what it's supposed to absorb, the impact. If it doesn't absorb impact, then you're going to end up breaking the lifter, and that's what usually happens, and that's how you get lifter failure. So since I did a lot of machining on this engine, and I'm using a new, I reused a block, but I've taken some off the deck of the head and off the deck of the engine to make it flat. I went ahead and went to the 6.4 push rods. Now, if you go to the Ford dealer and ask them for a 6.0 push rod, if you bend yours or anything like that, you're going to get a 6.4 push rod because they don't have the old style push rods anymore. So it's either you're going to get a 7.3 push rod, which make sure you put these push rods side by side. If you go to the Ford dealer and get a push rod, put them side by side and make sure they're pretty close to being the same length. If you got a 7.3 push rod, it's going to be about that much longer. So don't put a 7.3 push rod in here because you're just going to break a lifter, or you're either going to break your lifter or you're going to snap your rocker carrier right in half, and it's just going to blow it right out of the truck. I've seen it happen. I saw there was a truck that someone worked on, and I saw them put a push rod in there that the Ford gave them, and it wasn't the right push rod, and they snapped the rocker arm, and it shot the push rod out of the truck. So, anyways, this one's using 6.4 push rods. I've done so many engines in the past where I don't change out the push rods, and I have good since I'm doing the machining on the heads, I don't buy remanufactured heads from Ford. So since I'm doing the math right and cutting down the valve stem heights and stuff like that, and selling heads to everybody across the country, I'm pretty sure, 100%, that you're not going to have any problems with your lifters or push rods or anything like that. So it's made to go back to stock. And if you're buying heads from someone else, I kind of question that. I've seen heads come from different companies where they don't cut their valve stem heights all the same because they say, well, you got 100 thousandths play in your lifter. Yeah, but how much bottomed out is that lift? How much is this push rod really going into that lifter when you put the head and lock everything down? You can't measure that. It's completely impossible. So, anyways, with this engine, since it's a remanufactured block and new heads on it, I went with the 6.4 push rods. If I'm doing a install in here and I have just a head job to do, and I'm not going to change out the push rods, I'm going to use the push rods that were there. It's just me. It's just the way I do things. A lot of people say, well, it's probably better if you run the 6.4 push rods. Okay, when I get the engine taken apart, I can look down and see the cam journals, and I can see if they're worn out or how the lifters are riding on the cam. If it's scarring it up pretty bad, then yeah, you should probably change out your push rods to save your lifters. Other than that, I don't bother changing the push rods out, and I never have an issue with the truck with lifter problems. So I have yet to see any of my, last year I did 60 or so head stud jobs that I've never had one truck come back to me for any problems whatsoever, and I've never had a truck say, yeah, my lifter failed because I just studded or something and did different heads. You're not going to have that issue. I don't have that issue, but since if you're machining the block, then it's smarter to go with the shorter push rods. That way you can make up for some of the play and the geometry of the valve train. So anyways, I'm going to stop rambling on about this. I'm throwing the 6.4 push rods in this one, and we're going to go ahead and lock down the bridges, rocker carriers, and get the rest of this put together. And make sure when you put these in, put them in brass side up. Okay, so I got all the push rods in, the bridges, rocker arms are in here. On these rocker arms, on this specific vehicle, actually on this engine, the customer gave it to me, and most of these were broken. These clips, you can get them if you do break them. Here's a part number for it, so you can order them from Ford dealer, and put those back in. Get those put back on. So you'll notice, like on this engine here, like this rocker arm right here, I could rock it back and forth. That means that the push rods are down, the lifters are down, and it's gonna preload the when I tighten this bolt, the washer and nut up for the stud, it's gonna preload that lifter. So what I'm gonna do is all these bolts that hold the rocker arm assemblies, I put them in, and I only put those on hand tight. I don't torque those down. I torque those down last. Those are the last things I worry about. So what I'm gonna do now is get the studs, put the washers and nuts on the studs, and put the bolts in. I just put the bolts in hand tight just to align the rocker arm assemblies, so that way they don't move. And then I go ahead and torque down all the studs, and then I'll come back. So torque down the studs with the ARP studs. I torque them, I think it's like 210 foot-pounds. And then once I torque all those down in 3 different increments, I do 70 foot-pounds, 140, and then 210. Once I go around and do that, I go back and I torque the rocker carrier assembly bolts down to 28 foot-pounds, and then I'll do the outside, the inner bolts right here. I'll do all those at 28 foot-pounds as well. So I just do it all in one shot. So I do 28 foot-pounds on the rocker arms, 28 foot-pounds on the inner bolts, and then 28 foot-pounds on the exhaust manifolds. So I'll put all the exhaust manifolds on, and this engine will be done. So, and then once I get this all torqued down, I'll show you the high pressure oil rail setup here. Okay, now we got our oil rail put on. Make sure it goes on straight. You don't want it to be crooked, or else you're gonna nick the rubber O-rings that are on the injectors. And if you nick one or cut it, you're gonna have a high pressure oil loss. So you're gonna be hunting that down later on. So next, you just put this on. This one already has an updated dummy plug in it. So I'm just gonna tighten these down. I just go on a star pattern on these, just to make sure it's on nice and even. And then once this is installed, this truck already had updated standpipes, and the updated standpipes have a plastic washer on the bottom O-ring right here. So there's no need to change this out. I just take a rag, clean it off, make sure that there's no debris on it, no dirt, and just throw it right in, and tighten that down. I think it's 70 foot-pounds of torque on this. These are only like 10 foot-pounds of torque. It's not real much, if that. It's not. I just use the electric wrench. I don't even torque these. But for this, the book calls out for 70 foot-pounds of torque, but I torque it with a 1/2-inch bar and just snug it up nice and tight. So you can torque it if you want. I kind of know where it's at by now. And this is, and once you got that all done, there's your lawn block. So if you have any questions about building an engine, go ahead and send me an email, or you can comment on the YouTube page. In my opinion, I see a lot of YouTubers out there questioning me, and I get a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails about my preferences and how I do things. In my opinion, when I started out in this, and I knew Ron, I I took advice from someone that actually works on these trucks day in and day out, and on, you know, every engine. Um, and I prefer to take advice from someone who I actually see get their hands dirty, kind of say, compared to someone that just, you know, films a YouTube video and talks about stuff over an engine and watches other people, you know, work on their stuff for them. So, you know, this is doing the engine stuff and working on these trucks. It's more of a hobby to me. I enjoy doing it. I don't see it as a job. You know, I was told, you know, if you find something you love doing, then you'll never work a day in your life. So, so this is pretty much what I love doing. So if you guys need help or advice or anything, feel free to ask. I can give you my opinion, and I can give you what the book says to do. So I can give you both. You know, so. I sell these heads. Check out my YouTube video on those. I'm going to start selling. I have a couple blocks here that I'm actually going to start overhauling them. I've had them sitting around for a couple years, so now that I figured out that no one wants to build these engines here in Washington, or no machine shop wants to put them together, I'm going to basically start making these engines and having them here to sell, because they're so easy to do. It's not hard to build these motors. And if it was, you know, engines that I'm building for a customer, like this one, it's all about what the customer wants. I gave him options of, you know, using ARP bolts on the connecting rods or using ARP bolts on the mains and stuff like that. He just went ahead and went with ARP studs, which is fine. You know, everything on the bottom end was new anyway, except for the main bolts, and you know, they only, you know, it's up to you. You're the customer, so I'm gonna build it to what you want. It's gonna hold up regardless. I have no, you know, doubts in my mind that this engine's gonna last a long time if he keeps up on his maintenance. If he was horrible on his maintenance like he was before, then he'd probably be spending another, you know, 10 grand or so for another engine. But you know, with the problems that this engine had, the bill wasn't too bad. But like I said, every motor's different. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me, comment, and you know, subscribe. And I hope you like. Thank you.